Hello everyone, Father Bob Gross. It's 11:48. It's Sunday, August 26, about 10 to noon. I just got done with morning masses and a baptism after mass, and I want to share with you the homily that I gave to the folks. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday thus far. Thanks, Maria, for this awesome mug. Anyway, here's what I came up with. The readings are from the book of Joshua. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. The second reading is from Ephesians about the mystery of marriage between husband and wife and how they reflect the mystery of Christ's love for the church. And that's the conclusion of the Bread of Life discourse in John 6, where many of his disciples actually no longer follow him and go back to their former way of life. And Jesus asks the apostles, "Do you want to leave?" And Peter replies, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." Those are the readings for this weekend. I want to start with this. There's a part of my vocation story that I have not shared with all of you during my time here as pastor. I think it kind of connects to moving forward and understanding the scriptures. I knew that I was called to be a priest of Jesus since I was in third grade. I had a profound moment of experiencing the Lord when I first served through an Augustinian brother by the name of Brother Patrick. And he asked me to consider to becoming a priest when I was in third grade, and that invitation has kept with me ever since. But with that, there was a time in my discernment and my call where I specifically said no to God. It all happened in the fall of 1998 when I was a freshman at Loras College. And Loras College has a tradition of having Wednesday night mass around 9:30, 9:45, and when the weather's really good, to have it by the grotto. And I went to those a couple of times, and the third mass I went to that first semester, I sat down and was waiting for mass to happen, and a young lady sat next to me. And I introduced myself, and we met, and I thought she was pretty cute, and we started to be friends, and then I started to ask her out on a date, and here's the miracle thing. She actually said yes. I'd want to have a girlfriend my whole life, but no girl was really interested in me. So I finally experienced one that was very interested. And I remember specifically telling God, I don't want to be a priest anymore. I want to follow the path of marriage. But here's the kicker. When I realized I wanted to be married during that time, I realized I had to get a job. So I started to go into education, secondary ed, history, and civics. And with that, it allowed me to delve deeply into an interest I've had throughout my whole life, and that is civics and government and politics. I'm one of those weird guys that listen to the oral arguments of the Supreme Court on YouTube. I'm one of those weird guys that read law reviews. I'm one of those weird guys that follow very closely the Supreme Court and the justices and their philosophy, and when they have new appointments to follow the confirmation process pretty closely. And recently I've been reading a book. I actually have it right here. I've been reading a book by a father and son, and it's called The Constitution, an Introduction. And in that book, they make a really good point, which I forgot about, and that's this. One thing that makes our nation unique is that we have a written constitution that is the supreme law of the land. That everyone is equal before the law, the rule of law. No one is above the law. And it's a written constitution. I actually got one of those too. If you're an American and you pull this document out, the Constitution of the United States, everyone is obliged to follow this as the supreme law of the land. You can look at this document differently, but it's the one that's the basis for our life as Americans, the ultimate authority. There's a spiritual analogy with that we have to ask ourselves. What is the spiritual authority for your faith? What's the final authority for your faith? Because I think that's one question that's being asked as we look at the gospel today. Jesus does not back away from his teaching about the Eucharist. And the disciples are starting to have a hard time with it. This is a hard saying. Who can accept it? And Jesus doesn't back down. And many people start leaving him. The Son of God losing congregants. And then he turns to the apostles and he says, do you want to leave me too? And Peter speaks for the 12 and says, to whom shall we go, Lord? You have the words of eternal life. But the question I ask, though, is Peter answered pretty quickly, but was that everyone's answer? Wasn't there some doubt in some of the apostles to say, hey, maybe this is our time to kind of cut and run here. Let's cut our losses and go back to fishing. Because I have to be totally honest with you. That's how I feel today. I feel like leaving, going back to a former way of life, in light of all the horrible news that is coming out about bishops covering up abuse, and then bishops being unfaithful to their vows of chastity, and priests doing horrible things to the vulnerable. It's like 2002 all over again. And it makes me sick. The last couple of weeks, I haven't wanted to wear my collar. You know, there are times when you wake up in the morning and you don't want to go to church. That's what's been happening to me. I really don't want to go to church. How can this church that I belong to, that's supposed to be the true church of Jesus Christ, be acting like the way we do? I know there's a ton of good people who are faithful. But when you have the clergy being unfaithful in this type of way that we're starting to hear reports about, it makes you kind of wonder. So it focuses me on who's the authority of my faith. Now let's look at that word authority just briefly for a moment. Authority means being close to the one who is the author. It's not about power and control. Authority is being close to the one who is the source. And the author of our faith is Jesus Christ. It is Jesus, the Son of God, the Son of Mary, the good and gentle shepherd, full of mercy and truth, full of compassion and challenge, who only desires that our salvation be won by his blood on the cross, right behind me here, and his resurrection on the third day. It's his goodness, his integrity, his honesty, his fidelity, his pure goodness is the only reason why I got up this morning and I celebrated Mass today. No other person. And when we lose that focus, that's when we get lost into infidelity and scandal and corruption. We really live in a corrupt world. You see it in government. You see it in back payments. You see it in the evil getting ahead. And you also see it in the church, corruption, an egoism, a careerism. People thinking that they can get away with murder. It really bothers me. And I'm sorry. I don't blame anyone who doesn't go to church anymore. Yeah, there's some laziness on account of some Catholics. But if I saw what I saw, even if one priest did what many have done, I can understand why people don't go anymore. But the deeper question I want to ask, though, is if you just keep your eyes fixed on Jesus and fixed on the saints who are reflections of Jesus, it's worth staying in the church because it's the true church, the one that Jesus founded. And that's what I want to encourage you to, that if you keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, it doesn't matter who your pastor is at one level. It doesn't matter about the school consolidation here. If all of us would keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, we can weather the storm. If we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, we will understand that the second reading is actually good news. I was watching the Couples elbow each other as they heard the second reading. Be subordinate to one another out of reverence for Christ. That's for every member of the church. Humility. All of us under the lordship of Jesus. We are not masters, we are merely servants. And that's what Peter got. That despite it going really bad, he kept his eyes fixed on Jesus. So I offer that to you. Who is the final authority of your faith? I pray it is Jesus Christ the Lord. And be part of the solution, be part of the renewal by faithfully following after Jesus Christ. And may God bless you. Have a good Sunday.